On today's episode of Tyler Rambles About Random Crap, I'm going to talk about why I cannot be trusted. Alright, so this is something that's been on my mind for a few days, mildly concerning. But I think I might be extraordinarily untrustworthy when it comes to my opinion about motorcycles. And here's why. So some of this may be a little bit repetitive if you've seen some of my other videos, but when I started riding motorcycles, when I started wanting to start riding motorcycles, I guess, I did a ton of research, right? I'd been riding my little CT70 teeny motorcycle, and I'm like, okay, it's time to get a big boy motorcycle. And so I do all this research, right? Best motorcycle to start on, best motorcycle for shorter legs, all this kind of stuff. And I knew I wanted to ride off-road mostly, but I also wanted to be able to ride to the off-road sections, so the natural choice was a dual sport, and I decided on a smaller one because it was going to be my first motorcycle, and I was just learning, and I wanted to be able to pick it up and all that kind of stuff. So I do all this research, and I'm looking at CRF 250Ls at the time. This was before the 300L. I'm looking at Yamaha TW200s. I'm looking at the Kawasaki's 250s. I'm looking at the XT225s. I'm looking at the XT250s. Anyway, long story short, after literally months of debating and researching and watching YouTube videos and reading forums, I decide the bike for me is the Yamaha XT250. So I start looking for one. I find one for a decent price. I go buy it, and instantly I'm like, I made the right choice. This bike is brilliant. Love the XT250, right? Still love the XT250. It's an amazing bike. Anyway, so I start riding it, start going on my little desert adventures, loving life on my XT250, and then I want to get my son into motorcycling. He had been also riding a little mini motorcycle, so I'm like, okay, it's time for him to get a bigger motorcycle, so he can start riding with me. So I found a really good deal on an XT225, a little bit older, not fuel injected, but for all intents and purposes, very similar to the XT250. And again, found it for a really good price at the time, and picked it up, loved it, amazing bike. And I expected to, because everybody said it's pretty much like an XT250, but with 6 gears. And anyway, so I love the XT225. My son loved it until he crashed on it one time, got a little bit spooked. So he's not the biggest fan of riding off-road anymore. But anyway, so I love the XT225, right? Then I start thinking I want something a little bit bigger. I like the small bikes, but I want something a little bit bigger, something that has a longer range and can get me out in the desert for 100 miles and back without having to pack extra gas. Something that I can go a little bit faster on the highway sections that I go on. So again, tons of research. I'm going back and forth on different things. Nothing seems right. Then, lo and behold, the CRF 300L comes out, and they have a rally edition, and the rally edition just looks perfect. It's still light, still pretty small engine-wise, but it's got a bigger tank. It's got some fairings on it for wind protection. It's more like my perfect little adventure bike. So I go on a hunt for one, and the the difficulty of finding one of those bikes kind of drew me in. You know, it's kind of like this treasure hunt. So I'm calling everywhere. I'm calling Colorado and Arizona and Nevada and every place in Utah, obviously. Finally, kind of on a fluke, I found one, right? Somebody had one on order, they got it, they decided they wanted something bigger, so they didn't pick it up. So I talked to a dealer and they're like, yeah, we have one right this second. I drove 50 miles, picked it up that day. Anyway, and I get it, and of course all my research is spot on. I mean, it's just like the perfect bike for me. I love every single thing about it. And I'm like, man, I am brilliant. I know how to research bikes because this is exactly what I wanted, okay? Then, flash forward a few more months, and my daughter, my youngest daughter, has been riding the mini bikes, and she wants to start riding a little bit bigger bike. You know, these mini bikes from the 70s are a blast, but you know, they've got little teeny tiny wheels, just not anything that could even remotely keep up with any kind of riding that I do. So I start looking for the perfect bike for my daughter. She's little, so I'm looking for something smaller. I don't need it to be a dual sport. She was 15 at the time. I don't need her to ride it around on the street, so I'm looking for a straight dirt bike. Do a ton of research again. I'm looking at the Yamaha TTs. Anyway, I finally decide on a CRF 125F big wheel for her. After, again, weeks of researching what's going to be the best bike for her size, and all that stuff. And so hunt one down, buy a brand new CRF 125F big wheel for my daughter, and it is just perfect. I love riding it myself. It's just a blast to ride. She gets on it, it's super easy for her to learn on. She's having a great time. It's just the exact perfect bike for her. So again, I'm like, man, I am so good at researching motorcycles. Then I start looking for a bigger bike because I'm thinking, okay, yeah, I love my CRF 300L Rally. It's a blast, but sometimes I think it'd be fun to have a bigger bike, especially when I get out on actual freeway. You know, I don't like capping out at about 70 miles an hour, 80 if I'm lucky. And for really, really long trips, I would like a bigger bike. So I'm doing lots of research because it wasn't really in my budget to buy another bike at that time. So I'm just doing research, and I mean, like, for 6 months I'm looking, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm looking at the Tenere first, and then I'm thinking, okay, that's a little bit tall for me. Then I'm looking at the Norden 901, keeping an eye on the new Honda, the Transalp, the Suzuki Versys, or whatever it's called, 800 that just came out. Anyway, I'm looking at all these bikes that could be candidates for the eventual time. Look at that little rabbit. Hopefully you can see it. For the eventual time that I can go out and buy a bigger bike, for the times that I want a bigger bike. So doing all this research, and I decide I'm going to get the Touareg. I mean, you know, I really wanted the Tenere for its reliability, but the seat height of it intimidated me a little bit. The top heaviness of it that everybody talks about made me a little bit nervous. So I finally decide I'm going to get a Touareg from Aprilia. My hesitation is that there's no Aprilia dealerships in all of Utah, so I'm concerned about that. But I'm thinking, okay, it's all right. I'm still gonna have my CRF 300L Rally. If I need to drive my my Touareg to Idaho to get it serviced, that'll be okay. You know, I'm rationalizing this because I want one, right? And obviously I never got one, so it's just kind of in the back of my mind. When I get a bigger bike, it's going to be a Touareg. And then, kind of out of the blue, probably because of YouTube, well, definitely because of YouTube, the KTM 890 kind of popped up on my radar, just kind of out of the blue. Didn't do any research on it, just I'm like, okay, I never really looked at the KTMs because I kind of drank the KTMs are horribly unreliable Kool-Aid. So, you know, they just never really were a huge consideration for me. And then my buddy calls me up and he's like, hey, I'm gonna go check out some KTMs. He was looking at a bigger KTM at first, and I was like, oh, that's funny. I was just kind of thinking about an 890. And so he starts looking at slightly smaller KTMs, and he ends up buying, like, the next day a 790 Adventure R. Again, if you've seen my other videos, you know this, but he drives it straight over to my place. We go out into the desert. I'm on my 300L Rally. He's on his 790 Adventure R. And while we're out, he lets me give it a try. And I'm like, this is amazing. This is just an awesome bike. I should have thought about this more. So all of a sudden, you know, Touareg's kind of out the window, because not only is this KTM that I'm just discovering, not only is it awesome and a blast to ride, but there's actual KTM dealers in Utah. So I'm like, okay, this is it. I've found my mid-size bike. Big bike for me, but yeah. So so instantly I'm on Team KTM, right? So within, I don't know, a week, 10 days, I find a deal on this 890 Adventure. And, you know, the little research I did led me to decide that I wanted the Adventure base model, not the R, because I wanted it to be a little bit shorter. And I knew that, you know, what I sacrificed in suspension, getting to S, would be okay for me because of the type of riding that I wanted to do on a bike like this. So I find an 890 Adventure for a really good deal, I thought, and I buy it within 10 days. Shouldn't have, probably, because I still couldn't afford it, but I did anyway. And once again, I'm like, oh, I made the right choice. This bike is just awesome. Love everything about it. The center of gravity is low. It handles like a dream. It's got so much power. Everything that I hoped it would be, it was. So again, I'm patting myself on the back because I am such an awesome motorcycle picker, right? And then, I don't know, a week or so ago, this nagging doubt started entering my mind. I'm like, wait a second, who bats 1,000? Seriously. Nobody, right? I mean, am I really that good? This person who never rode motorcycles at all until he was like 47 years old. You know, I just am intuitively and brilliantly just so good at picking the perfect motorcycle every single time. I mean, is that realistic? Is that probable? I don't think so. I think it's much more likely that I just like all motorcycles. Like, I haven't ridden a motorcycle that I haven't loved. And I doubt that that's because I'm just super good at only picking the very, very best motorcycles because of YouTube, right? Like, I'm really starting to suspect that I just like every motorcycle I ride. So I'm hoping somebody out there in YouTube land can prove me wrong. You know, can somebody recommend a bike that is just sucky to ride, that you just hate? Because I'm curious. I have a feeling that if you recommended the crappiest bike on the planet and I was able to find one and take it for a spin, I would still like it. You know, it's kind of like asking a kid in a candy store, you know, what's the best candy in here? They're going to be like, I don't know, everything's good. Like, oh, this saltwater taffy is the best thing ever. Oh, maybe you should try a candy bar. Oh my gosh, this chocolate is amazing. Have you tried the bubble gum? Oh my gosh, the bubble gum is so good. You know, it's not very reliable. So it sounds like a joke, but I'm really pretty serious that you should probably do more research than just listening to me when you decide what motorcycle you should buy, because I am entirely untrustworthy. Unless somebody can prove me wrong. You know, find me a motorcycle that I hate, or at least don't even like that much. I mean, really, the only motorcycle that I've owned that I don't love riding that much is my DR650, and that's just because it's broken. Like, it kind of doesn't run very well, right? Because I'm fixing it. It's got an engine knock, and so, you know, I'll take it for a spin when I think that I've maybe got it worked out, and the carburetor needs to be cleaned, so it stutters, and it, like, you know, it's not the DR's fault. It's the shape of the DR. And even then, it's still kind of fun because I'm working on it, and I get that, you know, fulfilling feeling of like, okay, I got it running a little bit. So even that, it's like, it's not fun. But so yeah, if there's a motorcycle that you're like, oh, if you actually get on X motorcycle, you'll know what a crappy motorcycle is like, then let me know, because I'd like to save a little bit of my credibility if I can, but I have a feeling that I can't. Anyway, so yeah, that is my introspective thought of the day. I really appreciate you listening to my ramblings about random crap. Subscribe to my channel if you feel like it. Ride safe.